Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and to part 3. So plenty of work to do now, starting with taking the windscreen out. Now unfortunately I'm not auto glass and the screen had a crack in it already, so as much as me and a few of us tried to really carefully remove the windscreen, unfortunately there was just no saving it whatsoever. That crack just started to get bigger and bigger, so we removed it as carefully as possible, bagged it up and disposed of it. Straight into descaling, a lot of surface rust, or so I thought. I just really quickly wanted to talk about window seals because this discovery is living proof that if you don't keep up to the seals and replace them and let them get into these conditions, then you're just kind of asking for rot. As you've probably seen, the seals are pretty perished and unfortunately they've been letting a lot of water in, which I think really didn't help. I mean, I know these old discoveries are like 30 years old now, so of course they're going to be rusty, but this really doesn't help. So I'm finding more rust holes now. Most of the chassis is just surface rust, so I'm not thinking about replacing the chassis or anything like that. As I said in a previous video, the chassis tend to be quite good on these, it's mainly just the bodies that rot out. Now onto rear bumper removal. This will need replacing, I think, because it is just far too gone and I haven't even descaled it, so it'll be much worse than this. So I think I'm just going to cut my losses with this rear bumper and find one in better condition. You'll probably spot as well through this next series of videos some fairly new parts, and that includes new nuts and bolts with copper grease on. This made removal of the anti-roll bar so much easier. So gently just lowering the tank down, disconnect these three, and the tank is basically out at that point. I'm kind of having deja vu to the 110 as well, because it was about this time of year last year that I were actually doing all this to the 110, so I've sort of got a bit of a race going on with myself from last year. So it'll be quite interesting to see when this discovery will be done and compare it to last year, where I don't think the 110 needed as much work as this discovery does by a long shot. So it'd be quite interesting to see when I'll actually get the discovery done and how it compares back to last year. More needle gun action. And as you can see, my P-head can't hold all this PPE. But anyway, off she goes back with the descaler. And I promise you that is not a black bogey either. It's just probably rust and grease and whatever else. Now removing the boot floor. So first and foremost drilling out those spot welds and then using the persuasion bar to try and pry up the floor. Just some more descaling with the needle gun. This does need doing and it will need a lot of descaling just to really hammer down on that rust and try and remove as much as possible to really strip it back and see exactly what I'm working with, and it'll expose any little holes in the chassis. So it's definitely a necessary step and well worth it. And as you can see, I've uncovered some not so scary holes in the chassis. That sill has completely had it, hasn't it? Just completely had it. Now everything was pretty seized, so I'm just angle grinding that bump stop off. And again, just finishing off that day with taking out the grille, headlight surrounds, etc. just to get to those light boxes, because unfortunately these are not an item that can be replaced. Nobody's actually manufacturing these at all at the moment, so it'll be a case of just patching the ones that I've got and just trying to get as much of that back to sound metal as possible and welding in some new little fabricated pieces, but again that's for a future video. And of course that is the least of my problems right now. So now, as I've removed other panels, I'm literally doing exactly the same thing to this front wing to get this off. And here is the bare shell behind that aluminium wing. As you can see, there's lots of scary holes in here. The 110 is here with me as well today, and the trailer as well, to drop some bits off and pick up some scrap and waste and take it home and then dispose of it. Now, just showing some more holes of horror. The chassis again is pretty much fine apart from that back leg, but again it's not something that I'm too worried about. Now on to sanding and preparing the roof, because I'm going to start fabricating some little bits and pieces and cutting the roof away, because there is a lot of work to do up here. So the steel roof and inner structure is completely rotten, I know, shock, but unfortunately it's completely had it, most of it. So I'm just using my palm sander and then just sanding any little pieces that I just couldn't get into by hand. At this point I was kind of figuring out how much I could save and where to cut and how much to cut, so I kind of keep going back and forth over and sanding more bits and sort of thinking about it. And I'm also using this broken mask because I just could not find another one, and this were the best thing to make sure I wasn't inhaling any of that dust. And at this point in time I was sort of eyeing up the alpine window where this seal sits and just sort of thinking, like, how on earth can I weld this without distorting it with it being such thin metal. So I was weighing up what I was going to do, deciding whether to just replace the metal, try and fabricate some bits. So I decided to go for a whole new corner, which would be much easier to nick bits off of. So I got a scrap corner from an old 300 TDI Discovery that was in much better condition than mine. It literally had barely any surface rust on it whatsoever. Pretty much all of it was completely sound metal. So this is the roof. And these are the seals, which are basically brand new. So this is the sort of thing that I'll be doing pretty much all the time. I won't let my seals perish in future because it just completely rots them out, like I said earlier. So because whichever previous owner replaced the seals on this Discovery, that is why the metal is so good under there, because it's just not been exposed to any weather or salt. So it's time to start cutting now, both with the grinder and a slitting disc, and a fancy new Dremel where appropriate. I also sanded down the gutter, ready to drill the spot welds out and tease the roof off. There's that roof section removed now. I did kind of expect something like this would be hiding underneath. Unfortunately the roof did end up a little bit mangled, but I literally just beat it back straight later on. Now I'm sanding the donor roof down with my palm sander, just getting ready to drill those spot welds out. So here is the original roof panel on top of the donor roof. I'm using this as a stencil to draw around and cut appropriately because I want to get it as bang on as possible. I don't want to have to be trimming this away, so precision here for me was key. Just making sure all the contours line up. And this is the inner steel structure now. And this is the original steel piece that I will be replacing. So now I'm cutting that piece out. And I'm using my Parweld XTP40 plasma cutter again. And you'll probably see this plasma cutter featured in quite a lot of episodes from here on out because it just comes into handy all the time. And it just helps to get in those hard to reach places. So here is the crusty section finally removed. It does look like it's actually had some cavity wax in here at some point, whether that be from factory or a previous owner, I have absolutely no idea, but it seems to have saved quite a lot of the inner structure, which is really good. Because just like a chassis, it'll rot from the inside out, so it's okay having a lovely surface, but it's what's inside that actually counts. I will be adding more cavity wax in once everything's been completely welded up and once I'm at the prep and paint stage, which I am quite far away from at this point. So I'm hand sanding to ensure that I can MIG weld it seamlessly, because unless you are doing like MMA welding, you can't really MIG to anything that's rusty, has any debris in the way or paint or anything like that. So I'm just making sure to remove everything like that so it's completely clean metal and it'll just give the best weld it possibly can then. So I'm just scraping away this cavity wax, whatever this waxy texture is, just to ensure the underneath is good, which it is. I could already see that. And I will be injecting cavity wax back into it once it's all welded up anyway, so I'm just scraping that off now. And just to finish off the afternoon, I was removing those large gloopy bits of body sealant which are an absolute pain to get rid of. Sanding it down to clean metal. I have actually found a better method of doing this, which is using white spirit, but I will show you what I did with the white spirit in a future video when I've got some visual aids to help me out. Ensuring the cuts are straight, I cut these with my plasma cutter, ready to patch it in now, so time to suit up in some PPE and crack on. And again, just ensuring not to distort the metal, that's why I'm slowly just tacking it in piece by piece. So this is the next day and this is how I left it last night. There is a gap in the bottom, unfortunately. Things like this are going to happen because not every discovery is the same, and I'm by no means a fabricator by trade or anything like that. I never claim to be a professional, this is literally just how I'm doing it. So it's never going to be perfect. But I just decided to stitch it up and just continuing to stitch it together just trying to tack in multiple places to give the metal time to cool. Now using a flat disc on a grinder to sand those welds down. And as you can see them with the aluminium panel on, it was really important to me just to make it as seamless as possible. I had to weld in another small patch as well because at the time I didn't realise the metal was weak there at that point, so that is why there is a smaller patch above. And this is what it looks like. And of course I'm just using my Parweld 201 DI welder. I decided to tack in the original gutter as that just fits so much better. I mean, of course it would, and it actually wasn't rotten, so I did try and fit the gutter from the 300 TDI Discovery, but the original one just fits so much better. And to tack in the gutter, because I don't have a spot welder, I'm just using a thick piece of bent copper as a heat sink, which works really well. Here is the new roof section in place. I triple checked its placement. I must have gone round it like a dog trying to lay down in a ball about 20 times, just making sure that it was perfect, looking at it from different angles and just ensuring that every contour on that roof lined up, which it did, and I was really happy with the placement. So all I did was just use some clamps and welding magnets just to ensure that that panel was not moving anywhere, because once it's tacked, that's it pretty much for it then. I didn't want to keep running heat through it and grinding more bits. It was pretty much first time it needed to be done. So I'm really happy with the placement at this point, and I'm just slowly tacking the panel into place. So as well as the cameraman being there holding the camera in place, they also blew air through an air gun from the compressor to cool the panel down straight away as well. This is just to ensure that the panel isn't overly warping. Of course, when you are welding, there is going to be distortion there because the metal has to contract and move, but if I can keep it to a minimum and just help it out, then I will definitely. So next we test fit the Alpine window and seal, and again really happy with the placement. So this was just a double check before the final tacks went in that once the window and seal went in, it didn't distort the panel or move it or create any weird shapes. So I am over the moon with how this is all sitting together. I think a little bit of filler, and once it's resprayed, I don't actually think you're going to be able to see that it's had a new roof piece in there, which I am extremely happy about. Now I just thought I would add this into the video. This is a new wall piece of mine. It's actually from a original Camel Trophy 110. So unfortunately the 110 was in an accident many moons ago, and the original radiator panel from it was just thrown out and has pretty much just been decaying in what I can only describe as a patch of grass for however long it's been since it was actually removed from the vehicle. So this has added really nicely to my collection of Land Rover bits and bobs I have around the house. And this is my parts box as well, which is ever growing, and I'm using pink sticky notes as little labels just to make sure I don't actually forget what's in the boxes. Like I said in a previous video, I've literally bagged and tagged absolutely everything because my mind is like a sieve and I won't remember what's for what. So this is the next day with the Alpine window removed, filling in any gaps, double checking the panel and going back and forth over it. Now it's not looking super pretty right now, but once those beads are sanded down, filler is applied and the vehicle is resprayed, I'm pretty confident you won't be able to tell, so I'm not really too worried about how it looks at the moment. And a final descale to end my day. So thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you again next time.